Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Monique's Home, and today we are going to talk about the 6 things you must do for effective homeschooling. As I said, we're talking about the 6 things you must do for effective homeschooling. And the things that I'm going to share with you today are not only for preschoolers, they're important to do even with babies, with toddlers. I've worked with infants and toddlers for a really long time, and I would do all these things. And they're great to do too with much older children, even for those who are in grade school, maybe even those in high school. And it's not only for those who are having to create their own program, who are having to think up their own activities. It's also for those people who are registered with a homeschooling program and are just having to implement the things that are sent to them by the school. It's also for those who are just helping with homework. And it's, I think, super helpful and super important to do for those of you who are like me, are in the same boat as many people, having to help our children now with online schooling. So I thought I'd break it down into the 3 Ks and the 3 Ps, just so it's easier to remember. And it's funny because when I think of the 3 Ks, I think of my best friend, who coincidentally has her own YouTube channel, but I'm not talking about this K, I'm talking about the letter K. So we're going to talk about the 3 Ks first. First K is to know your goal. What is the objective? What are the skills? What is the concept that you want your child to learn? Now, this might be a little bit easier for those who are enrolled with a homeschooling program or you're registered with school and they send the curriculum, they send the topics, or they send all the activities to you. But I think it's still very important for you to be aware of the specific objectives for the activities. For example, 2 or 3 weeks ago, my 6-year-old had to learn about the sun. Now, the school sent everything like videos, worksheets, art activities, all online. And she's 6, so she's able to do these online. But I felt that I still needed to be clear on what is it in particular that she needed to learn at the end of the week, because lessons are sent on a weekly basis. So in my mind, what is the objective? Is she supposed to know the size of the sun relative to the earth? Is she supposed to be able to write a summary or describe how the sun is important to life on earth? If I know the end goal, then I'm able to better support her. I'm able to, even if she's able to do the activities on her own, I can guide her towards reaching that end goal, and I can check for understanding. Now, for those of you who are creating your own homeschooling program, thinking of your own activities, all the more do I encourage you to create your goal. Have that shining beacon of light at the end of the tunnel that will give you direction. Now, what I've found to be very effective, both when I was a teacher and in, homeschooling my children, is to create an annual goal or like a long-term goal. And when I have this, it's easier for me to break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks. For example, for my 3-year-old, my goal is for him to know his letters and all the letter sounds. Now, that's my long-term goal. So I break it down into smaller, more achievable chunks, and that looks like us learning 3 or 4 letters in a month, maybe a letter and a letter sound each week. Now, that makes it more manageable for me. It's less overwhelming. It helps me organize and think about the activities that we'll do on a day-to-day basis. Another important aspect of our first K is to create goals that are clear and measurable. So how does this look like? For example, with my daughter who is learning about the sun, from a goal of knowing the sun to goals such as describing the characteristics of the sun, comparing the size of the sun to that of the earth, and writing a summary of how important the sun is to life on earth. Now, when you create goals that are measurable, that are concrete, then it helps you to appropriately check for understanding. Now, how about for a preschooler? For example, for my 3-year-old, a goal of knowing the number 5 is not clear. It's not measurable. But if you state it as able to name the number 5 if he sees it written on a piece of paper, or able to identify which one is number 5 if he sees 3 numbers on a piece of paper, or able to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and say that that is a group of 5 objects, able to quantify this as 5, then you're able to really check for understanding. You're able to support them in their learning because it's clear to you what it is that you want them to take away from the learning experience. Second K is to know your child's skill level. Now, once you have your goal, it's very, very important for you to know where your child is starting from. For example, if our goal is for a child to write his or her name after a couple of months, dial back and think, does my child know how to hold a pencil? Does he have a good grip of it? Does he know the letters of his name? Does he know how to write them individually? Does he know the order of the letters? So knowing your child's starting point allows you to create a detailed roadmap to your goal. Also, it informs you of how your pace is supposed to be. Let's say you have a group of kids and most of them are able to read 3-letter words already, like cat or dog or pot. Then maybe you can introduce them to long vowel sounds, or you can start introducing them to letters that, 2 letters that sound as one, like sh, ch, or th. But again, if that's not the case and most of your kids aren't able to read yet, or most of them don't even know their letter sounds, then you need to pull back a little. Then you need to slow down and go back to the basics and work on some things before you create a new goal. Third K is knowing your child's interest. Think about it. If you're in the movie theater watching a horror movie and you don't even like horror movies, would you pay attention? No. I don't think so. It's the same way with our children. If it's not enticing for them, if it's not meaningful, then they won't pay attention and it will not stick. What we hope for our children's learning journey is that they are engaged, that it's made up of experiences that they will want to remember, that they will want to be part of. And we do that by taking the time to think about what interests our children. For example, when I introduced Matina and Renee to the concept of addition, so now they're 7 and 6, at that time they were 4 and 3, I used something that was meaningful for them at that time. I didn't go out and buy an expensive teaching material for addition. We used what we had at home. So for Matina, until now she loves princesses. So at that time she had like little princess dolls, so we used that. We would put 2 princesses together and then 3 princesses together, and she would count them and we would put it all together, and then she'll see that 2 and 3 make 5, and you could see her face light up. She was so excited. She was so happy doing it. She did it again and again, just because it was familiar to her. It was something that she enjoyed playing with anyways. So now it was just a fun game for her. So the key there is to think about what piques your child's interest. What is it that they enjoy? What is it that they like doing, or what interests them? And use that to introduce your academic concepts. Because when you do that, then you're taking something familiar and using that to introduce them to something that's not so familiar. And it's easier for them to take it in because you create that connection between the two things, and it just makes it a lot easier for them to embrace, a lot easier for them to understand and remember. So we're done with the K's. Now we move on to the P's. First P is to prepare yourself. Your role as a homeschooler, as an educator, is very, very different from your role as a parent or even as a grandparent. I'm already a teacher. I've experienced working with infants, with toddlers, with preschoolers, with children from grade school, but still I find it challenging to work with my own children sometimes. Sometimes when I'm working with my own flesh and blood, I realize that my expectations are much, much higher, but my patience is less. So that's not a very good combination to have. So I'm really trying to be aware of how that manifests in my interaction with them. So when I say that our role as parents is different from our role as homeschoolers, it's not to say that we completely take out our being parents out of the equation. What I encourage you to do is to actively think about the situations that these two roles merge and in which situations these two roles have to be separate. My super tip is to take time and reflect. Start a journal, maybe type it down in your laptop or do self-talk, whatever works for you, but find your purpose for homeschooling. Whether this is something that you've planned for a really long time now, or you've been put into this role because of the unique situation that we're in, find your why. What motivates you to see your children through this situation? What motivates you to help them through it? And also, have a concrete action plan. Anticipate the situations that might be a little bit challenging for you and think about how you will concretely address them. For example, your child is not interested in learning about numbers today. How will you react to that? If your child is writing a summary about, I don't know, snow leopards, and in the middle of it, she says, I don't want to do this anymore. How will you handle that? P number 2 is to prepare your child. Now, we've all seen this, how our children behave differently when they're with their grandparents, or that they listen better to their teachers sometimes than they do to you. So whether your children have been homeschooling for a long time, or they've been in regular school, having in-person sessions and are now having to switch to online learning, so they're doing it from home, or this is their first learning experience and they're starting off from home, it's really important to have that conversation with your child. Let them know of the new role that you're taking on. Let them know of the changes that will happen at home, that a lot of the learning activities that they used to do outside will now be done inside the home. Also, involve them in the process. Ask for their opinion. Maybe create a schedule with them. Ask them, do you want to take your lunch break at 12 o'clock? Do you want to do all of your learning in the afternoon? Would you rather play in the morning? Or would you want to finish everything in the morning so that you're free in the afternoon? More importantly, involve them in creating homeschool program rules. So ask them, are devices allowed in the learning area? Ask them how you will hold them accountable for work that's not finished. The more that we involve them, the more that we ask them for their opinion, the more that they'll be invested in the process and the more likely that they will participate. Third P is to prepare the environment. Now, our home is our safe haven. For our children, it's a place to rest. It's a place to have fun. It's a place to play. It's, the place where they cuddle up with you on the bed. But in the same way that we prepare ourselves, that we have a conversation with our children, our home also needs to be prepared so that it's conducive to learning. So how do we do that? For some people, it's a whole room that they turn into a full-fledged classroom with desks, with a whiteboard, with play materials, with books. For some people, for us, it's a table in the basement. So ours are 2 tables put together and then there's a shelf on the side. So again, involve your children in this process when preparing the environment. Ask them what needs to go in the shelves. Maybe ask them to pick out the books that will be on display. Maybe invite them to choose which of their artworks will be put up on the wall. So really help them make it their own space. Carve out a special learning place for them that will put them in the right frame of mind when it's time to learn. And we're done. The 6 must-dos for effective homeschooling or learning with your child at home. Your 3 Ks of knowing the goal, knowing your child's skill level, knowing your child's interest, super duper important, and your 3 Ps of preparing yourself, preparing your environment, and preparing your child. I have to go now. I have to make dinner. My kids say they are starving. But if this episode has been of any help to you, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with others. So I will see you in the next couple of videos. But till then, make your everyday your own version of extraordinary. Bye!